once again for Lady Diamond, Bridge Over Troubled Waters. Diamond, thank you. And you definitely need to sing, honey. That is definitely your ministry. Hey, old Lady Diamond, as many of you know, was on the video camera recording everything for the past couple of months. Personal friend of Mike and Denise Lattimore. And Denise kept telling her, you need to sing. And Diamond kept saying, no, don't tell anybody, don't tell anybody. Well, she shouldn't have said that. So Denise shared with me, and Linda auditioned her and said, hey, this lady needs to sing. Yeah. Absolutely. You'll be singing here more often. Thank you. Thank you for that magnificent blessing. It is appreciated. Yes. Well, ran across an old one that you may appreciate. It's concerning this newspaper in Pretoria, South Africa. And they had been trying to correct this ad, because the ad, as it was first printed, said, the Reverend A.J. Jones has color TV set for sale, telephone 555-1313 after 7 p.m. and ask for Mrs. Donnelly, who lives with him, cheap. So the next day, the Pretoria paper printed a correction. We regret any embarrassment caused to Reverend Jones by a typographical error in yesterday's edition. It should have read, the Reverend A.J. Jones has color TV set for sale, cheap. Telephone 555-1313 and ask for Mrs. Donnelly, who lives with him after 7 p.m. Then the next day, the paper said, the Reverend A.J. Jones informs us he has received several annoying telephone calls because of an incorrect advertisement in yesterday's paper. It should have read, the Reverend A.J. Jones has color TV set for sale, cheap. Telephone after 7 p.m., 555-1313, and ask for Mrs. Donnelly, who loves with him. One day later, please take notice that I, Reverend Jones, have no TV set for sale. I have smashed it. I have not been carrying on with Mrs. Donnelly. She was, until yesterday, my housekeeper. The next day, one more ad wanted a housekeeper. Telephone the Reverend A.J. Jones, 555-1313. Usual housekeeping duties, good pay, love in. Tama K. Keefe said, to die in one life is to blossom in another. My question for you this morning, have you ever died while still breathing? I know I have, and most of us have. Fascinating statement by Picasso. He said, every act of creation begins with an act of destruction. The master teacher, Jesus the Christ, said, you must lose your life to find your life. And I had a challenge with that for a number of years, trying to meditate and see what it actually meant. We'll explore that today. This thing called dying is in all of the great teachings. But I know that none of that matters when we're trying to hold on with every fiber of our being to the life that we know. To all that we know. We're resisting with everything that was in us the letting go and moving into our next chapter in our book of life. I can recall when I was at E.J. Corvettes, a large retailer back east, or used to be there, out of business now for a number of years. But I moved over to them from A&S, one of the big guns back then, got a buying job, and it was great. I was a young man, so it had a lot of status associated with it. The vendors catered to us, took us to all the best restaurants because I wrote with a big pencil. In other words, we had 57 stores in 7 states. And if I wrote just a sample order, it would be a $15,000, $20,000 order. Now, back in the late 60s, early 70s, that was a lot of money, especially for a vendor if you were out looking for business and to get your merchandise into one of the key stores. Well, things were going well, but after a while, something within me saying, something is not right with this organization. They were trying to change from a discount operation and becoming a department store operation. However, in order to do that, there were many steps that needed to be taken, and you needed many more people in order to do it, because it is an evolutionary process. It can be done, but it takes a humongous investment to do that in changing the stores. The stress and pressure was terrific. I'd hired a young assistant, a man right out of college. Within 3 to 6 months, with all that stress and pressure, he developed a twitch in his eye. Went to the doctor, and the doctor told him, you're under too much stress and pressure. You need to get out. He said, no, I can deal with this. I said, okay. Within another 3 to 6 months, the young man developed a twitch in both eyes. Needless to say, he had to leave. Well, after a while, I looked around and saw that all the other components in my life were starting to fall apart. Couldn't attend school anymore. I couldn't work out anymore. And I was involved in the martial arts back then. Couldn't do that anymore because the job was too demanding, too stressful. I kept a suitcase packed at home because I could be called at any point in time to fly to one of the other stores in order to help renovate, reorganize, and reset the department. Something within me, that inner voice said, you know what you need to do, and you know that you know that, and now that you know that, you need to move on and let this go. Each of us has this voice of wisdom inside of us, but we tend or have this tendency not to listen to this voice. Looking at my own life, I began to realize we tend not to listen to this voice because if we listen to that voice of wisdom within us, we know very often we have to give up the life that we know. And as that old saying goes, the devil that we know is better than the devil that we don't know. And since we're fearful about stepping into and allowing this creative presence to move us into something greater and better, because we can't see it nor understand it at that point in time, we tend to hold on, even in the pain. My holding on to that position there, and the ego was saying, oh, you can do this. The money's good. You've got the status. Look at the material possessions that this can buy. So I held on a lot longer than necessary. And what really prompted me to step out, because I was ignoring that divine voice, that inner voice of wisdom. What really prompted me to step out was, after a while, I started having stomach aches every time I even thought about going to work. When I would think about it, I would develop these aches and pains, but I would push through it. It was at that point in time I knew I had to let it go, and I had to trust that inner voice. And I walked into my boss's office, divisional merchandise manager, and said, I'm giving you 2 weeks. And he said, wow, good for you, because we were all going through the same thing. He said, do you have another job? I said, no. He said, you're leaving without something else? I said, oh, yeah. He says, man, you've got a lot of courage. I said, no. I've got a lot of pain. What I've got is a lot of suffering. And this is unhealthy. It's an unhealthy environment for any of us. So I moved on without anything else, because I chose at that point to listen to this voice. We all have that divine wisdom within us.